Good morning, everybody. State Director of Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin, Megan Novak, is our very special guest today, Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live, presented by, wait for it, Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin. AFP Wisconsin works to reignite the American dream and break down government barriers that hold us back from our full potential. Visit AFP-Wisconsin.com to learn more and join AFP to fight for more freedom for all Wisconsinites. Megan, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. With a tagline like that, how can I not be good?
Yeah, it's weird having like yeah. Anyway, it's been a while, and I'm so glad that you came back on because you were on last year. And in that time, you guys have been, we have a partnership and you advertise on DrydenWire, and there's a big, huge banner right at the top. I mean, you can't miss it, right? And I've had a lot of people actually ask, send me emails and texts and say, so what exactly is AFP Wisconsin? I'm like, just go to their link. I'm like, well, we learned a lot, but still, they had a lot more questions about it. How does it work? So I'm like, you know what? And maybe we should have Megan on and kind of explain this. So now I have something I can direct them to. Like, go to this link, watch this. This explains everything. So for people who don't know, what is AFP Wisconsin?
That is such a good question. AFP Wisconsin is, I like to say, the premier grassroots organization in Wisconsin. And we are across the nation, and this is just the Wisconsin chapter. And what we do is we connect citizens, everyday citizens, with the policies that are impacting them, that our state and federal government are trying to pass. And then we elevate their voices so that they can get better involved in the public policy process, use their voice to stop bad policy and to pass good policy to improve their lives. And our view is that when government barriers are erected, it makes our lives harder. And so we try to break down those government barriers or stop them from even going up in the first place so that people can live out whatever their American dream is. And we don't tell you what your American dream is. That's for you to decide and for you to figure out yourself.
And how do you do that?
A lot of it is educating citizens about what's happening in the Capitol, either the state Capitol or the DC Capitol, because a lot of people are, living their lives and they don't have time to sit and watch the legislative website for what bills are being introduced every day like I get to. And so educating them on what's actually happening, what's the budget process, how does it work, how can you get your voice involved, what are the opportunities to go testify at the Capitol or to contact your legislator. And then we also engage in elections and we endorse candidates that are aligned with our view of state policy and federal policy that really tries to break down those government barriers. And then we encourage people to come with us to help elect those officials by door knocking and making phone calls to support the candidates that we endorse.
I think we talked about that last year when you were on. I think I'd mentioned that Eric Bott was on, the person that was in your position before. I think I don't know if like promoted is the right word, but is he still with AFP?
Yeah, he's still with AFP. He's a regional vice president.
There you go. Wow, fancy.
Yeah.
But when he was on, I was asking him about, so what does it look like when a candidate gets an endorsement? Like, what does that mean? Like, just a whole bunch of TV commercials? It goes, not really. And if I recall, he had said, this was like 3 years ago, though, that first of all, you get like an army of volunteers. And that's huge because that still is like the number one best way to get a message out is door knockers. He goes, and that's a huge component. He goes, but yeah, there is some TV and some stuff like that, but like commercials, it used to be 30 seconds was a good thing. Then it was like 15 seconds. And if I recall, this was again 3 years ago, he had said, now it's down to like 5 to 7 seconds, like maybe like before a YouTube or something. And that changed. He goes, but really, it's not the flyers, it's not the mailers, it's not the commercials. The bulk of it really is the volunteers and the grassroots operations. Is that still true?
Absolutely. We couldn't do what we do without our volunteers all across the state. And it really is, you lose people after 2 seconds nowadays, even the attention span for commercials, especially if you recall back to November being a swing state as we are, you couldn't have a single commercial that wasn't political related. Like at some point people are tuning out, but when we're going to their door, knocking on their door, having that conversation directly about what issues are important to you, how is government impacting your life, all of a sudden people start to pay attention much more than they ever would from just seeing a commercial. And that's the power of our volunteers because they go out and do that every day.
So how did it go for AFP? Do you know off the top of your head? Well, first of all, what races do you typically, does AFP Wisconsin typically look at? I mean, this isn't like a local level. This isn't like board chairs, supervisors, stuff like that, right? It's probably just assembly and senate. That's the bulk of it, is
Yep, yep.
legislature.
Most of our work is in the state legislature and
Okay.
endorsing that it's there. And then separately is an organization called AFP Action that engages in federal elections.
Oh,
And so that would be any endorsements we would make in House of Representatives or U.S. Senate
I see.
races.
So how did it go? Do you know off the top of your head or ballpark it for us? How many candidates AFP Wisconsin endorsed in the last election in the legislature?
In the legislature, I think we ended up right around 15, plus or
If,
minus a
and
couple.
and how did they do?
They did pretty good. They did pretty good. We had a couple really tough losses, unfortunately. Losing Senator Dewey Strobel in the state Senate is a loss for economic freedom in Wisconsin. But overall, we had some really good people that we endorsed that were either reelected or elected for the first time that we are so excited to kind of take the reins down in Madison and fight for good policy.
Yeah, how does that work? So if you have, like, I know you've endorsed like Senator Romaine Quinn, and you have in the
Mhm.
past, but there's a body of work there, right? You can see, all right, this person clearly looking at his voting record, which everyone has access to, and all his decisions are largely, mostly, overwhelmingly the things that we kind of align at AFP Wisconsin. But what about a candidate who's just a challenger? There is no body of work, and it's how does that process work? Do you reach out to them? Do they reach out to you, and then what is it, like an interview? Like, how does that work when you don't have a body of work?
Yeah, so it goes both ways. Sometimes people reach out and sometimes we reach out to them, just
Mm.
depends on the timing. But what we'll do with a new candidate is we'll still sit down and have that really robust conversation about policy. And it's looking for to understand how people are going to approach public policy, not necessarily are you going to vote yes or no on this, but it's a do you believe in
Oh,
the free markets? Do you believe in competition? Do you believe in limited government? And how would you approach those kinds of policy decisions to really get a feel for? Because you never know what issues are going to come up in the legislature. You could go in thinking you're going to work on, tax cuts and education issues, and all of a sudden the entire focus is something completely different. And so you can't just say, hey, here's three bills, how are you going to vote? You have to really understand how people are going to
I
approach
see.
public policy making and what their internal views are on the role of government in people's lives.
So after you endorse someone, uh, you notify them, and then what? Is this one of those things where you can't talk to them? Is it? It's like a soft money type issue. I know that's different, but similar, right? That there can't be communications from a campaign to. Is that kind of where you guys are too? Like, yeah, we can't talk to them anymore. We're gonna go door knocking, but yeah, we can't even tell them we're gonna be in their area. Like, we can't communicate.
Correct. Yep. No communication for with any of the candidates after an endorsement is made per state and federal law.
Weird. Well, just weird as in, like, you really get to know someone. Like, yeah, I think this is a good partnership. Well, I'll never talk to you again. That's kind of
I like to
bizarre.
call it the breakup text or the breakup phone call.
Oh,
Like, hey, talk to you in 6 months. Good luck.
oh, that's so funny. I saw recently that you AFP was you. When I say you, I mean AFP Wisconsin. Uh, Endorsed Brad Schimmel for Supreme Court. Are you still
Yes,
there?
we did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is that the first time that AFP Wisconsin has gotten into the Supreme Court race, or that's something that, if it's the right candidate, we've done that in the
Yeah.
past?
Yeah, not the first Supreme Court race we've ever done, but it's definitely the earliest we have ever jumped in to back a candidate. So we endorsed Brad shortly after the November elections wrapped up, and our amazing team of passionate grassroots activists have been door knocking since before Thanksgiving for Brad.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been cold. They're tough.
and they're volunteers. That's crazy. Yeah. So how do you think that race is going? Someone asked me a few months ago what I thought. I'm like, I'd give Brad. Well, actually, if you asked me a year ago, back when it was, who was it, Bradley, who was still
Hmm.
still in
Oh,
the, or considered, before she announced that she wasn't going to be running again. I said, yeah, that's tough. I give him one chance in 10. I give him one chance in 10. And 3-4 months ago, I would have said one chance in 5. now? I don't know. I feel like he's gaining more ground. I don't know. Where do you kind of stand on that your view on that? How do you think he's doing?
I think he's running a really smart race so far from what I can see and what we hear from voters at the doors. He just rolled out, I think it was like 52 current sheriffs or something like that,
Yeah, I
bipartisan list.
saw that.
Your sheriff, I think,
Yeah.
was on that list.
I don't think our sheriff was. I know my dad has endorsed him in the past. I don't know if he was on there, but no, Barron County Sheriff I saw was on there. Chris Fitzgerald.
Yeah,
In our area, Polk County Sheriff Brent Walk, Sawyer County Sheriff Doug Morotek. Those are the ones that popped out at me right away. Dean Meyer, former sheriff in Russ County, who is the executive director for the Badger State Sheriff's Association, had endorsed him. Yeah, he has a lot of support. He's always had, honestly, he's always had a lot of love and support from law enforcement, even back when
definitely.
he's attorney general.
Yeah, and I think, you're just starting to see ads on both of the campaigns come out in the last week or two. Brad's ad, I think, did a great job of introducing himself to the voters of here's who I am and here's what I believe in, and I believe in our justice system. His opponent took a little bit more of a negative approach and went for an attack ad right away.
That's interesting because usually it's the opposite, right? The one that you would think is the challenger, the one that is I'm the underdog here. That usually they are the ones that start with the attack ads or quote
Right.
unquote attack ads.
Yeah. So,
That's
the thing
weird.
that we're hearing on the doors, though, and this was even way before we even saw these ads coming out, is that people just want candidates who have a sense of normalcy. They don't, Wisconsin voters, I mean, look at our state. People who don't live here don't understand how we vote for and elect Tammy Baldwin and Senator Ron Johnson, like how we've elected Donald Trump and Tammy Baldwin on the same ballot. Like, people don't get that. But when you talk to Wisconsinites, like, voters just want someone like the beer test. They want someone they can sit and have a beer with and have a normal conversation and that is authentic. And that's Brad. I mean, he's been on your show. I've talked to him. I've heard
Yeah.
him speak. Like, he is one of the most
Yeah.
authentic
He's a
people around.
really hard guy not to like. I'm just saying. You can disagree
Yes,
with everything that he believes in, fine. But you can't actually say, boy, he's just a bad human being. Like, you can't say that. He's just a really solid dude.
guy. Yeah, he's a great guy, and it's so clear when you actually talk to him that he's in it for the right reasons. He wants to protect Wisconsin, and he believes in the future of our state, and that translates to voters. They can feel that authenticity
Mhm.
from Brad directly, and that's been really refreshing to hear on the doors.
And by the way, good morning. I'm always going to call her Representative Gay Magnifici, even though that she's now retired. Good morning, Gay.
We
You
miss
know,
you guys.
that makes sense actually because Romaine Quinn kind of has that, right? And he's been even when he's in the assembly, he was a very popular candidate, as popular as in he would win by a lot, including bringing Democrats as well, because he's Romaine Quinn and is so personable and likable. But there's another one. I don't know if you know this. Well, Chance Green.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, that dude is so fun, and he's just—I actually got to meet him in person. He's been on the show, but I haven't met him in person until just recently. I think it was Eric Hovde was up at an event right here. I think it was in just north of Spooner. I think it was in Trigo, and I went just to say hi to Tom Tiffany. He was going to be there, and just to say hi to a few people. I really wasn't going for Eric Hovde, even though he was great. He's been on the show. I'm just saying I just went to kind of mingle around, and I actually got to meet Chance, and oh my goodness, that dude is so fun and
Yeah.
just a nicest, coolest, most down to earth, real person. And he's becoming very popular. And I think you hit it on the head. That's why.
Right. People, you can't fake authenticity and you can't fake trust. You either have it or you don't. And
Yeah,
we can see through the BS so quickly in Wisconsin.
yeah.
We might be Midwest nice, but we know when you're lying to us. And
Very
that
good
is
point.
key for Wisconsin voters.
Yeah.
Don't lie. Don't lie and be
Yeah.
authentic. Be yourself.
So there isn't a primary for Supreme Court, right? So there isn't a February thing. There isn't three people running.
Not for Supreme Court. There's definitely primaries for some of the other local races and for the state superintendent race. But for state Supreme Court, we are going straight to April 1st.
Um, so I actually don't know anything about. I don't even know her name, to be honest. Brad's opponent. I thought that she was a judge in Dane County, and someone said no, she's not a judge. She was just not just, sorry, but a defense or an attorney. What was her title? What is her job?
She is currently a
Oh,
judge
she is a
in
judge.
the county, and she was previously legal counsel for former Governor Jim Doyle.
Oh,
and she was the general counsel for Planned Parenthood Wisconsin.
oh, well, there you go. So, how do you think the race is going to end up? I mean, obviously, AFP Wisconsin has endorsed Brad, meaning you guys want him to win. How's it looking right now? I mean, let me ask you this: has your opinion changed at all in the last 3 months?
Yes.
Why?
I think when we are out talking to voters, you can feel this kind of ground shift happening of a return to normalcy, is how I'll put it. And people just want consistency. And I think when you look at what our state Supreme Court has been doing in the last year, year and a half, in some of their rulings, that is basically whiplash for the state of Wisconsin. You know, you have decisions that were decided by the court 3 years ago, and now they're rehearing the case, and they're going to completely change the opinion, or they did completely change the decision that was made previously. There's no sense of precedent. And, you know, yeah, Supreme Court opinions probably aren't read by most people in Wisconsin. I would venture to say well over 50%, but the impacts of them are felt, and people don't want that whiplash. We don't want the drama in Wisconsin, and I think that is translating to more support for Brad Schimmel out in the voter universe.
Yeah, it's kind of that seen and not heard thing, Supreme Court. Like, they do their job, but I don't know, maybe it's media's fault. Maybe we focus too much on it. And by we as media, I hate to put myself in that category because I'm actually anti-media on so many levels. That's why we try to do everything a little bit differently. So maybe that's a part of it too. So is it true, though, that after the maps, how do the maps work? Because everyone thinks that that's over. But there's still another, it's going to come up again, where I think it's like, what, every 10 years they look at the maps? Who does the maps next? Because didn't the Supreme Court, by saying that this was unconstitutional, not unconstitutional, I don't remember what the actual ruling was, but, you know, we had to do different maps. Didn't they take it out of the legislature's hands? Like, who's actually going to do the maps next?
I will preface this with, I am absolutely not a lawyer and never went to law school. So this is my opinion, not a legal opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after the census in 2030, we'll have to redraw legislative and congressional maps again. That, like you said, has historically been the job of the legislature, and that's how it's written in either our statutes or our Constitution. But I think given how partisan that has become because of some of these Supreme Court filings, I imagine no matter what happens, it's going to go straight back to the Supreme Court. No matter who's in charge of the legislature at the time, I think or the governor, I think it's just going to end up in the court. And
from what I've read, I think that's actually the answer. Like, I don't think the legislature does this again now. But anyway, that's way down the road. Sorry, just got off on a rabbit trail there.
I don't even know what I'm doing this weekend, Ben. So
yeah, I know. I know it. You said the state superintendent race is coming up?
Yes.
Who's in that one?
So AFP is not engaged for any of the candidates, but there's 3 people running: the current superintendent, Jill Underly.
Oh, for DPI?
For DPI, yes.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Oh, that's really bizarre. I was talking to a legislator a few months ago, and I think we put up a press release from Jill Underly or something, and he called and he was kind of ripping on it a little bit. I said, well, how's she doing? He's like, well, her race is up soon. Like, her own party doesn't even want her, like, at all. He goes, she's gonna have he goes, there's no way that she's gonna win. He goes, you're gonna find out real quick. And that was a few months ago. And holy cow, sure enough, I'm already seeing a lot of things. And I heard Jessica McBride recently on, I think it was on a Meg Ellison show, and she was talking about that Evers has distanced himself from her as well. Why?
He refused to endorse her.
I know.
It's
his own.
It's crazy.
I know. It's weird.
Normally you don't see the Democrats quite so publicly in disarray, and it's odd seeing it happen. I think, if I put myself in Governor Evers' shoes, I think there's probably 2 reasons why he didn't endorse her and is distancing himself. The first is that her decisions on report cards and basically changing how report cards are done so it looks like every single school district in Wisconsin is meeting expectations, when at the same time we have districts where like 5% of kids know how to read. That is not my expectation. As a parent or as a taxpayer, like I want all kids to be able to read and do math at grade level. I don't think that's a super controversial opinion,
Right.
but maybe it is. So I think knowing that how unpopular that is with parents, he probably wanted to distance himself for that. And then I think second is that we were seeing kind of that, maybe she was going to be the next person to try and run for governor. And maybe he wanted to protect himself from a primary challenge and is trying to, use his bully pulpit to influence how that works. But that's just a theory. I don't know.
That's another one that's interesting. That again, if you asked me 6 months ago, is Governor Evers going to run again? I would say no. From all the people that I know down in your area and down that work in the Capitol, no. It would be like 90% sure he's not running again. But in the last 3 months, these same people are saying, actually, now he's kind of putting out some signals that, like, maybe. So they're saying it's like a 50-50 right now. Where do you put it?
I put it 75% he's going to run again.
Really?
Watching his State of the State last night, I don't know if you
I didn't
tortured
watch
yourself.
it. No.
Well, let me give you the summary, the quick,
Okay.
the quick cliff notes of it.
Yeah.
It was a roller coaster of political positions of Governor Evers trying to portray himself as a moderate, taking credit for all of the tax cuts that Republicans in the legislature have gotten through that his own party didn't vote for and that he's vetoed a bunch of, while never mentioning, of course, that through his veto power, he increased property taxes for the next 400 years, but talked about how great he's done for the economy and tax cuts. Then went into this, progressive policy wish list, then came back to a little bit more moderate, and then back to the progressive wish list. So he's setting himself up for the same playbook Tammy Baldwin has run every single one of her re-elections. Go to Madison, vote and behave like a progressive partisan, and then when you go out state and you talk to voters, you portray yourself as a moderate.
That's actually really smart. Like, seriously.
It's worked for Tammy.
Right. I mean, that's really, really smart. Do you? Yeah. So are you? Well, you're not implying. I'm inferring that you're saying that last night was essentially Governor Evers' campaign kickoff for re-election. That's State of the State.
That's how I interpreted a lot of it. He is setting himself up with that. I am a moderate, and I'm going to cut your taxes, but I have to keep the left happy too. Playbook.
What are your thoughts? What was that that situation that came out, or the announcement? What he had wanted in the budget and what he wanted to get done regarding having? What was it? How was it framed? That instead of the legislature doing things with executive orders, having people be able to vote on these things, be able to put those things on on ballots. What are your thoughts on that?
We have a way to do that. It's by electing representatives that you agree with, and then they can put constitutional amendments on the ballot. I mean, we have on the April 1st ballot, we have enshrining photo ID requirements for voting into our Constitution, which polls at like 80% support. And that is something that happened because people have made their voices heard through electing their representatives who agree with their policy positions, and then they can do it. I think, you look at California, who has the direct people to ballot referendum process that Governor Evers is proposing. And it is such again, going back to that theme of like consistency, that California clearly doesn't have that, and they can be all over the place for like, I hope everyone in California is okay with these fires, of course, like praying for them, but their policies are all over the place. And, we live in a constitutional republic, and we have democratically elected representatives to represent our voice in Madison and DC. And the process is working that way, of working to elect the people that you agree with, who then will put a constitutional amendment on the ballot. That's how it should work.
I think they have a messaging problem, though. We put out a couple of our area legislators voting yes on this. I think like Representative Armstrong, maybe Chance Green, Romaine, or maybe it was Romaine. I don't remember. It was a few of them. And a lot of the comments, a lot of people were saying, but don't we already require that? I think if they really need to kind of explain what this actually is. That yes, we already do, but this actually makes it constitutional, so that way a Supreme Court can't overturn this. Right? I think it's Supreme Court, or maybe it's the legislature, but like they need to kind of explain that part, because yes, it is, but this is just if you agree with it and the way it's going, this is why we need to vote yes on this. And so far, I don't think the messaging is getting out there very well. Is it getting out down there where you are?
No, I haven't seen anything. And we've got the town I live in is a very active political town, so they love their yard signs, and usually their yard signs are up before anyone else.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing anything. We've got a couple local judge races that are a little bit more top of mind around here, but nothing so far on the constitutional amendment. So I agree. We got to really, the people who are supporting it and out there, they got to make sure the message is clearly, yeah, it's required right now, but this is to make sure it's always required to protect our
right. Going back to we were talking about Jill Underly. Who are the other two candidates for DPI?
The other two are Jeff Wright, who is a superintendent in Sauk City or Sauk Prairie, I think is the school district, just outside of Dane County. And then Brittany Kinzer, who is an education consultant, former teacher and principal, and ran a couple charter schools in Milwaukee, I believe, is her background.
Are any of them, again, not speaking for AFP Wisconsin, but just personally, are any of them that so far what you've learned that are, well, or at least if you had to rule out one of them, how about that? Which one you're like, okay, I would be fine with these two people voting on, but boy, this third one, jeepers, no.
The number one issue that I care about when I look at that race is, well, I guess it's twofold, is our kids going to be able to read and write? And are kids and parents going to choose the school that best fits their needs? Or is government going to force them into a school? And it seems like, at least on the education freedom and school choice side of things, Brittany Kinzer is, with a charter school background, a lot more aligned with supporting education freedom, from what I can tell.
Charter schools seems to get banged on a lot. I honestly, I don't know anything about that stuff. I really don't. Romanians try to explain it. I don't understand it. A lot of people are just very, no charter schools or no money. I don't really understand it. There's no way you could probably do this in 2 minutes. But is there a short version of this where it's, okay, here's how you understand why this is such a big deal?
Yeah, so I guess it's there's two different camps or two different options in this education freedom. It's, there's charter schools, which are pretty much public schools, but without a lot of the red tape attached to them. And then there's voucher schools or school choice, which are private schools that students can attend with taxpayer funding. And so what I believe, and a lot of the people that we work with at AFP Wisconsin believe, is, all kids, regardless of the zip code that they're born into or their parents' income, should have option to the best school that fits their needs. And for some kids, that is their local public school. For some, it's a charter school that maybe focuses on more STEM programs, or focuses on, there's, charter schools that do, I think there's a German immersion program that's really focused on, foreign languages. And some kids' brains work that way. Yeah. For some kids, it's a private school with smaller population of students, or whatever it might be. And why would we ever say as government that you are limited because your parents don't make enough money to pay for that private school? We should be giving every single kid as much options as possible to develop into the beautiful person that they're supposed to become, to be able to read, to write, to find their passions and their dreams, so that they can, when they graduate from high school, they can figure out what is it that's going to bring me happiness and let me live out my American dream. Because that's what I want for me. That's what I want for my kids. And if I want it for my kids, it should be good enough for all kids. I want my kids and every kid in Wisconsin to live their American dream. And if they are not getting the best education possible, that really sets them back in being able to do that.
So what's the pushback on that? Obviously, there's the other side, and it can't be. They don't want kids to grow up to be successful or to learn how to read. That can't be. Obviously, that's not it. So please don't do that. Otherwise, if that's what you're going to say, we'll just have politicians on, because that's what they would say. But I mean, there actually has to be a legitimate reason on the other side. We like everything that you're saying, but, there's this other component, and that's enough for us to say we can't, whatever, or why this is a bad idea. What is that other side?
If I start sounding like a politician, you just have to mute me and kick me off the screen and cut me. I'm not a politician. But with the other side, I think 100% the other side would agree that they want kids to be able to read and write, and I would never demonize them from saying anything different. But what they believe is that anything that is not investing in a public school takes away resources then from that public school and limits the public school and the teachers union ability to educate kids. And so the other side is, much more interested in funding and increasing funding and protecting the public school. Whereas I think I've said competition like 80 times now on this show. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but not only is it good for the kid, but when you have 3, 4, 5 schools that are competing for the kids and the funding, they're all going to do their best. Like when one ship rising tides raise all ships,
Yeah.
or how I'm really bad at idioms, but you know what I mean? Like
I do.
once you insert that competition, that little bit of competition, all of a sudden you're going to see whether it's only one kid leaving or 10 kids leaving for a different education option. All of the schools are going to start doing better.
So would it be fair to say that when looking at it through one filter, it is putting the kids first? Not to say the other side isn't putting kids first, but more of a putting public education first, with the intent of helping kids. Of course, it's not like it's they don't you don't want to help kids. Is that would be kind of a fair assessment or a viewpoint on that, where
I think
it's
so.
really more public education isn't going super great. We always hear that, but I saw recently that our public education system in Wisconsin ranks super high across the country. And I don't remember what metrics that they were using, but
Yeah, I mean, some of that is these changing report card standards too that I mentioned earlier
oh
that
right,
the superintendent did, because now you have, again, school districts with 5, 10, 15% reading comprehension, and they're saying that meets expectations. And
wow,
so,
yeah, that'd be like if all of a sudden they moved like the obesity rate, or your BMI level, they moved it down. All of a sudden, one day you're like, no, I'm normal. The next day is like, nope, I guess I'm fat. Says it right there. Or in this case, it'd be the opposite. Like, wow, holy cow, I'm like skinny today. Like I'm underweight. Hey, check me out.
supermodel, I'm so skinny now.
I didn't know we could do that. We just changed the parameters, and
Great. That's a
everybody.
great analogy.
That's
That is what they did.
that's
Instead of
wonderful.
helping this kids or helping someone who's overweight, we're just saying, oh no, you're fine. Don't worry now. You're good.
Uh,
Who gets hurt in the long run? The kids.
what's that? That was
The
coffee.
kids get hurt in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, whatever is best for them. I totally get it. Well, speaking of governor's state of the state last night, governor's race. At some point, I've heard some names that are already out there. Josh Schumann, who's actually on a show recently. I've heard his name for consideration. Or, again, to be clear, they haven't announced, and they're not going to, and they didn't tell me they were going to. I don't want, somebody taking things I'm saying out of context.
Dan Bice.
Oh, we should talk about that. Anyway, but of course, Tom Tiffany, I've heard that name as well. And I certainly think that he would be considering it. Not saying that he would, but do it, but obviously he's going to consider it. Those are the two names. I heard another one. His name was Bill, but I can't remember. Who have you heard so far on the Republican side about possible governor runs?
That's kind of the same list I'm hearing, and I
Eh,
think a lot of it is going to be, when people see what happens on April 1st, is going to help a lot of people decide if they want to jump in to
why?
this race or not. I think it'll tell them a lot about the electorate and where Wisconsin is. You saw a split electorate in November. Trump, Baldwin, both won in Wisconsin, and so is that, I think a lot of people are viewing April 1st as kind of that split point. We're kind of at the fork in the road
I see.
right now between Trump and Baldwin elections in November. And so which way are we going to start trending? And I think, it's going to be a midterm election, which is always tough for the incumbent party, which is the Republicans in this case. And so I think there's just a lot for people to consider. But, I go back to, just lean into authenticity. For anyone who decides to run, be authentic, be truthful.
Yeah.
You'll win over a lot more voters that way.
Have you heard of anyone on the Democrat side? I've heard, of course, Josh Call's name thrown around, which I think is silly. I mean, I don't know. Maybe in the southern part of the state, he has a lot of support, but in terms of like people in the judicial system around here, right? Judges, district attorneys, ADAs, sheriffs, law enforcement, not a big fan. And that's coming from Democrats and Republican in these positions. Yeah, not a big fan. As an attorney general. Now, maybe he'd be great as a governor, I suppose, but I don't know. Have you heard his name being thrown around?
Oh yeah, his and then Jill Underly,
Yeah,
the DPI
sure.
superintendent, are kind of the big names that end up State Treasurer Sarah Godlewski. Her name is kind of always
Oh, sure.
in the mix of, because she ran in the U.S. Senate primary as well, so she's kind of got get thrown in the mix there. But like I said, I think Evers is going to run again.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way.
If I had to decide today of what I think he's going to run again.
Sure. Does the now that President Trump is in office, does that impact anything that you do? Does that make your job easier at AFP Wisconsin, or doesn't change anything at all because we focus on Wisconsin and Wisconsin legislature and those types of things?
No, we do some federal stuff too, and so actually one of the biggest priority we have at the federal level is at the end of this year, the Tax Cuts and Job Act, which was the major tax reform that Trump pushed through in his first term, is set to expire. And we would love to see that not expire. And so we have a full campaign that we launched 2 weeks ago, really trying to push to protect the tax cuts for Wisconsin families, American families, as well as small businesses. If you go way back, and this is going to get in the weeds, but when they first introduced the tax cut, they left out what are called S-corps, which are the pass-through entities. And it's something like over 90% of Wisconsin businesses are filed as S-corps. And so 90% of Wisconsin businesses would have been left out of this huge tax cut bill. And you know who fixed it? Our dear Senator Ron Johnson. He's the one who stood up and said, I'm not voting for this until we
see that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what it's about. I saw a few headlines, but I never actually clicked on any of the stories.
Yeah, so all of those tax cuts are set to expire at the end of 2025. And so we are doing a massive nationwide campaign to try and get Congress and the Senate and President Trump then to quickly sign an extension or to make them permanent so that we know that, for Wisconsin families, it's over $2,000 a year in tax cuts.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. Coming off of 4 years of inflation,
that'd be a nice break.
$1,000 tax hike on top of it it's unaffordable.
What is your state of the state right now? Evers had his last night. Where do you think our state is right now?
Do I get a full hour like Governor Evers had? Or
you have 9 minutes.
I can do that. We're sitting on a massive surplus right now. I think economically, there's a lot of people in Wisconsin who are still hurting and still reeling from 4 years of inflation and high costs. There's still people reeling from the shutdowns from COVID-19. And I think there's a lot of promise and a lot of hope in Wisconsinites that things are going to start turning around based on the national economy. I think the legislature needs to prioritize tax cuts. That's going to be incredible. With sitting on an over $4 billion surplus, tax cuts would be welcome by most, if not all, Wisconsinites at this point. But when I think about the state of our state, I don't know. I think about the people more than government because I like people. I'm a people person. I don't really like government them.
And yet you're in your job that you have. That's a whole other conversation.
We don't have time to get into that. But I like people, and I think Wisconsin people are so great.
We are.
They're hurting right now, but they're still optimistic, and I think it's going to be a good future for Wisconsin and Wisconsinites, and we're going to continue to be ourselves and be Midwest nice and get along. And I just hope that, I guess my state of the state is more of a hope that I don't ever want to live in a state or to be surrounded by neighbors who are torn apart by politics. And so that's my hope, because I try really hard as someone who works in the political world. I don't let politics define me or my relationships with my neighbors or my friends or my family. And I think if everyone took that approach, we would probably all be a little bit happier, because politics is not the be all end all. We all just have to kind of take a step back and find what we do agree on, because while we might vote for different candidates or disagree on a policy, I think we can all agree we want the best for the state of Wisconsin at the end. We just have different ways of how we view we get there. So I guess that's my state of the state.
Are we heading in the right direction on that, you think?
I think so.
I feel like we actually are. I don't know why. It just seemed like this that election before, when it was Biden and Trump. I mean, my goodness, you put a Trump sign or a Biden sign in someone's yard, say no more. I know everything about that person now.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it wasn't quite the same this time around. And I'm talking about the one that was 4 years ago, and
Yeah.
man, was that weird. I mean, holy vitriol and divisive everything was. And this time around, maybe it's because we've already done this once, but it's not as much. It didn't. I didn't feel as though or see as much of that divisiveness. Still strong opinions, and I love that. Go after someone's record, go after their policies, totally fine. I love those conversations. But in terms of the person, I don't know. In terms of the neighbors and just other people looking at other people and how they voted, it didn't seem to be as drastic as it was before. And I don't know what to contribute that to.
I agree. I think people had a moment of soul searching that, people, I think, unfortunately, people lost friends and tore families apart over politics. And I think it was kind of a reality check for people of we can't let this continue, and maybe taking a step back and say, like, hey, we can talk about, like you said, we can talk about the policies, we can talk about the record all day long, but at the end, we're gonna leave that conversation still as friends or as family, and that's how it should be.
It should be. Yeah. And then you have people writing stories at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and taking things out of context and making it worse. Like that was actually my biggest when I first saw that story that Dick Weiss guy wrote, or whatever his name is, taking that out of context when Fitzy and I had Brad Schimmel on for a show. I mean, taking out of context is putting it nicely. I mean, that was egregious. In fact, you could go as far as to say that was a lie. He 100% was not bragging or boasting about it. That's just stupid. But that was the first thing I thought of, is like not just the fact that this was not from a campaign, it's from an actual journalist or a columnist. That was weird too. But why? Like, why would you do that? This is the stuff that makes neighbors not like neighbors. This is what separates. This is what creates that vitriol, that hate, that anger in just us as like citizens and as human beings. Like, why would you do that?
It's crazy. It was literally a story that said, like, oh, wow, look at this totally normal guy who makes a totally normal joke and does normal things like trap shooting, and we're going to attack him for it. I asked my husband this morning, I said, should the first thing I do is make a bathroom joke to Ben? And he told me, not the first, but maybe in the first 5 minutes. And then I forgot.
Yes, I was a little late. We were a little late this morning. We were both in our private bathrooms.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, my God. And he was making fun of the whole, it doesn't matter. Look, Brad's a big boy. Brad can stand up for himself. I'm not standing up for Brad. He can do that on his own. I was very, very not happy with that. Just in terms of like, just because you could doesn't mean you should. Just because you can write a story and take everything out of context and make it this way, and apparently the Journal-Sentinel, his editors, the owners, whomever these people are, want this content from him, which that's weird. Like they want that. It wasn't like a Facebook post. Just because you could doesn't mean you should. Like, that's just...
You know what I think the biggest shame of it all is you have such a unique platform, Ben, and this is not me just, like, bragging on you because my logo is on it, but, like, you have a unique platform where you get candidates and politicians to come on your show for 45 minutes to an hour and have these free-range... Like, we didn't have an agenda coming into this. Like, and you don't do that. You don't say, like, we're only going to talk about these things. There are these beautiful conversations that cover every topic under the sun. Nothing's really off limits. Access to people, for people to listen to candidates or to their elected officials. And when you have people writing these stories that take jokes out of context, it's going to stop people from wanting to come on cool shows like this and having this conversation, and for then limiting people's access to for their elected officials or for candidates. And I think that's a big shame. I think there's so much value in these long form interviews for elected officials and for candidates, for their voters. And the more Dan Bice wants to write stories about bathroom jokes, the more that gets taken away from voters. And if we actually cared about truth in journalism, or whatever their slogan is, like, he would realize that and not write stories like that.
Yeah, but again, can you really, I mean, it's hard for me to really bang on the guy because, I mean, actually it's very easy for that, but because that's disgusting. Like, I could understand if it was a campaign thing, right? And because that's just how campaigns work. I get that world. I remember we had Tom Tiffany on, it was right before the election because he comes on every month, and he was talking something about mail. So either a bill or a letter he sent to the USPS, something about I can't remember even the topic, what it was, but it was something that he had done. So we're talking about it. And at the end, I just said, or on the end of that topic, that, man, I can't even remember the last time I mailed something. Like Jerusha, my wife, she does all the mailing. I sign checks, but she mails it. And holy cow, you know what? I don't even know what a price of a stamp is. I think the last time I bought a stamp, it was like 27 cents or something. What is the price of a stamp? And he goes, I don't know, like 53 or 57 cents now. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a lot more than I remember. Well, his opponent, then one on his Facebook page, someone sent a screenshot, and I don't remember his opponent's name now, but went on and he did one of those, how out of touch is your congressman kind of an ad thing. And they looked at our show, and, you know, I had asked, and actually it's 73 cents. Who freaking cares? Like, I was going to vote for Tom, but now that I know he doesn't know the price of a stamp, like, who knows the price of a stamp? Plus, you buy them in rolls, not single. Like,
Right.
It's just funny that, I remember asking Fitzy about it on one of the shows. He goes, I don't know, like 50 cents? Like, nope.
I would have said like 54.
Yeah, that's pretty much where most people were at.
93 cents for
My point is, like, I understand it from that aspect. Campaign stuff, totally get it. I don't like it, but I understand it. But from, you know, the largest newspaper in Wisconsin, really? That's the best you can do? Gross.
really gross.
Really
There's
gross.
real news happening too.
Apparently
It's
not down there. Hard to believe
Whatever.
they're losing subscribers.
No
All right.
way.
What, we're almost up against our time. What else do you want to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about? I love having you on. We could do this every week. That'd be great.
Sign me up. Sign me up. I didn't even hit my swear jar allotment. So
I told you you have two. Now, it wasn't a quota. You didn't have to use two, but you get two.
I said BS earlier. I censored myself. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, I've got nothing else on my. We didn't have an agenda,
No,
so
that was fine.
we're just out here being AFP and trying to protect prosperity and have everyone live the American dream. And I guess for anyone listening, if that interests you, then go to our website, like you said at the beginning.
AFP-Wisconsin.com.
If you've got a
Right.
pair of snow pants and want to come knock doors in the snow with us, sign up. Let's do it.
Yeah, I see you guys. I mean, you put up a lot of pictures all the time, like on your Facebook page, and I've gotten rid of X. Like, I don't even use it anymore. I don't even post our stories on X anymore. That place just became too toxic. And maybe it's changed now. I don't know. But it was like a year ago. I'm like, I can't handle this. Because even when I go just to post something like one of our stories, I just still see things in the feed, and it's just a different world. Or it was then. Is it still as toxic as it was?
I think it's gotten a lot better,
Really?
actually.
Maybe I'll have to go back on.
I'd give it a try. I actually recently, because they have an AI feature, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a tech person. And I used it for the first time
What
last
does it
week.
do?
I asked it to summarize a document for me, and it summarized it. It was incredible. It's like, this is amazing.
I use ChatGPT for that. It
Oh.
actually helps write
I'm
headlines.
still behind the times.
Yeah, so I'll use that for headlines because there's only so many. Let's say if it's a fatal crash. Well, when you put a headline in, that creates the URL. Well, when there's so many fatal crashes over the 9.5 years we've been doing DrydenWire, so single vehicle crash results in fatality. We can't use it again. All right, well, single vehicle crash in Barron County results in fatality. Then the next one, crash in... After a while, it's like, I'm running out of things that I can actually use. We want to be factual, so sometimes I'll put it in, like, create 5 headlines. And then I'll look at them, and I usually don't use one, but I'll kind of piece, like, one, like, ooh, that was good and that's good, because we don't want to be sensational. So I've used it for that. And sometimes I will actually take this long story, because I usually don't read a lot of the press releases that we publish. It's funny, like, there's a lot of content. I'll publish on Dryden, I don't even read it. Like, I don't know. Like Senator Quinn
You
or
always
someone...
resign, right?
Yeah, always. You're the only one. But we'll get a long press release or something like Governor Evers will send something that's really, really long. So I'll post it, and then I'll put it in ChatGPT and, like, summarize this article. And that's just for me. Like, I don't actually publish that part. But I'm like, just tell me what's the... Like, there's a lot to read here. Like, what is he trying to say in this? So it has a purpose. It really does.
It does. Yes, it's a good tool. You just can't overly use it, because I think if we overly use it, people are going to stop learning how to communicate. And then
See,
that's a problem.
that's how my wife describes me to our friends. He's a good tool. You don't want to overuse him, but he's like, well, I'm not sure how to take that, but okay.
I think it's a compliment.
I think so. I take it that way every time she says it. Oh, my goodness. All right. Megan, thanks so very much. This has been
Thanks,
it's
bud.
been a trip. I love it.
Can't
But
wait.
let's not wait another year. No kidding.
Okay.
How about quarterly? How does that sound?
Deal.
All
I'm
right,
in.
cool. Love it. Special thank you to State Director of Americans Prosperity Wisconsin, Megan Novak, for taking the time to come on for a chat with us today. A quick programming note, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I both have meetings next Tuesday morning, so we won't be doing our weekly Positive Tuesday Ben and Fitzy show, but we'll be back the week after. A week from today, Emily Gall from North of 8 and Neil Klein will be our guests on the show. That's 1 week from today. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.